Hi, and welcome to Girls Lunch, your mealtime companion where we talk about food, gender, sexuality, and where everyone is welcome.
I'm Julia Andreas.
I'm Nicole Hilton, and welcome to part two of our video games episode. If you're new here and you are just tuning in, I would encourage you to go back and listen to part one first and come back. We'll wait. Okay, now glad you're back. Julia, if we have folks who are not listening to these in order or, with some gap in between, if they didn't just pause the episode and go and listen to part one, can you give our friends a recap of what we've talked about thus far with cooking games and food video games?
I will do my best, as I have pregnancy brain, which means I have the brain of a goldfish. So last episode, we kind of went through, the basic history of food in games, starting with, games in the arcade and kind of, where some of these classic mechanics started. Let's see, we talked about, the bartending guy. What was that called?
We talked about Tapper.
Yeah, Tapper, and how, that was really the basis for the mechanic of, you have to fulfill all these orders in a certain amount of time. And then kind of how that evolved throughout different games, how Pac-Man is a food game. I thought that was super interesting.
Yeah.
And how he's apparently very popular with girls.
Pac-Man is great with the ladies.
Great with the ladies. I don't remember if we moved out of, arcade games.
We were just getting to the home consoles at the end of last episode.
We did talk about that one Chili's game.
Yes, which was a parody of Burger Time.
Of Burger Time, another game, arcade game that we talked about. We also talked about how, burgers are a very popular food for this game mechanic, probably because of the stacking and not necessarily, prepping of things. When we got wiggy with it, we got into the gender gap, you could call it, I guess, between, who makes video games and who plays video games, and how, since it was such a male-dominated space, how a more feminine perspective was left out of a lot of gaming, and then this presumption about what girls wanted in a game. And I think I got real heated about a personal anecdote, but I won't say anything about that here. You gotta go listen. And kind of the difference between girl games, boy games, what's now kind of transforming into cozy games.
I think we talked about casual gaming a little bit as well.
And then you talked about how it's all how all game is Dollhouse.
Yep.
And I'm like, yeah.
It's all dress up.
It's all dress up.
And how that's fine, actually. I think that's a pretty good summary. Yeah, so we talked about, some girly games / girls games for girls. In this episode, we are going to bring some of what we've talked about, what we've already built on. We're going to keep building and dial in more so on real cooking games proper rather than just sort of food related games, which is what we've been talking about up to this point. So to do that, I know I'm having you do a lot of work here at the beginning, Julia, but I promise I'll give you a break at some point.
Thank you for letting me be a part of this.
I do want to have you read a definition here from our friend Agata Wiskiewicz, who is the author of Delicious Pixels, which is one of the books that I really leaned on for this episode. If you, Julia, could please read Agata's definition of, or how they define the cooking game genre.
The name cooking games often evokes a specific group of titles that are considered casual, that are often marketed at women, and have a similar type of aesthetic, story, and gameplay. Such games often feature the restaurant setting and often include time management gameplay that prioritizes speed and quantity of served orders, positioning food preparation as one of several activities the players need to toggle, including managing the customers, collecting money and tips, renovating, customizing, and branching out the business.
Off the top of your head, are there games that come to mind when you hear this description?
Oh yeah, I mean the first one that comes to mind is Overcooked in the sense of management and prioritizing speed and fulfilling orders. I mean, there's so many like mobile games that do this too.
Yeah. We're going to talk a little bit about mobile games.
Ooh.
Briefly.
There was like, oh my god, there was like a Facebook one. And I don't remember what it was. This was back in like 2010 or something. There was a Facebook game that was like a restaurant. It was like Restaurantville. It was like a sequel or like another version of Farmville.
Okay, yeah.
Or something. Where it was like Restaurantville. That's definitely not what it was called.
Yeah.
But it had that same sort of thing where it was like, you gotta build out your restaurant. You gotta like fulfill all these orders and like accumulate money so you can like continuously build out your restaurant and stuff like that.
Yeah, so I just want to include this, here at the top because I think this is very well defined as a genre. And we're going to talk about a lot of games that are like this that definitely fall into that genre. Agatha also identifies 3 spectrums cooking games tend to fall into. So we have relaxing/competitive, essential/optional, and rigid/creative.
Oh.
And so each of those is like, each game would fall somewhere on that spectrum, right? So you might have games that are like, you might have a more relaxing game that's really chill. You might have a more competitive game that's like very, high stakes, time crunch. You feel very rushed. Essential optional is just referring to like how kind of integral to the gameplay is cooking. So is it like that's all you do is cooking? That would be essential. Versus optional is like, it's there if you want to. And then rigid/creative refers to how much freedom you have in what you're cooking. So can you experiment with dishes, or are you just like given a recipe and you have to follow it? Just some things to be thinking about as we discuss some more cooking games. So let's pick up where we left off in the 1990s. We talked a little bit about, home consoles and things like that. We're now going to move into the early 2000s and the rise of the internet and associated web-based and flash games, which is where I spent a lot of my childhood.
Cool math games for kids.
Exactly. Yeah. There is actually, we're going to talk about a game on here that was prominently featured on Cool Math Games that you may recognize.
Is it the Lemonade Stand?
Oh, I don't know if I know the Lemonade Stand.
Oh, man. That's the one that I played a bunch.
So, in this like late 90s, early 2000s period, computers are becoming much more affordable. We have the World Wide Web. As we talked about in the previous episode, previously computers were mostly bound to like you had to be a large business, a university, or like the US military to have one. Now it's way more accessible, right? Everyone is on this World Wide Webbed space. And now that we have the internet and computers, you know what they're great for?
Games.
So let's start with some restaurant simulators, shall we? The first one we're going to talk about today is called Pizza Tycoon, or if you're in Europe, it is called Pizza Connection. Don't know why they felt the need to distinguish between those, but anyway. Pizza Tycoon was released in 1994 by German game developers Cybernetic Corporation and Software 2000. Could you think of like more late 1990s names than Cybernetic Corporation and Software 2000?
Very Y2K, man. Is this the same company that made like Roller Coaster Tycoon and like Zoo Tycoon and those games?
I don't think so, because I was thinking that. I believe they are different. I think tycoons were just very in at this point in history.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so Pizza Tycoon, no relation to Zoo Tycoon or Roller Coaster Tycoon. But if you've ever played one of these tycoon-type games, right, it's like we were talking about, you're building your business, you're expanding it, you're making more money. In Pizza Tycoon, you choose a location in town, buy a piece of property, you then build and customize the restaurant, you get to customize your menu, all of that type of stuff. This one is very focused on logistics, not necessarily cooking, although I do think you get to make the pizzas that go on the menu, so there's that. I was watching some like playthroughs, and there is like a section where you're deciding like, I want to put a meat lovers pizza on there or whatever, and then you choose what goes on the meat lovers pizza and you build the pizza. Also, just for fun, from the game's Wikipedia page, I know Wikipedia is not a great source. However, I do think that this quote is really great, and I would like you to read it.
Okay. In Pizza Tycoon, The player can call upon local mafia to sabotage competitor restaurants or get money from criminal activities such as weapon and drug dealing. Just, just a little side gig.
you wanna have a cooking game with a side of Grand Theft Auto? Why not? Like,
dude, oh my god, if Grand Theft Auto incorporated having like a front restaurant business, I might actually play that game.
Yeah. Rockstar Games, if you want to hit us up anytime. So that's Pizza Tycoon. Now, they did release a sequel, which is called Fast Food Tycoon in the US, or anywhere else, Pizza Syndicate. Again, I don't know why they felt the need to like differentiate. Like, those Americans, you got to call it something else. I also don't know why it's called Fast Food Tycoon here, because fast food, when we think of fast food here in America, we think of burgers, fries, chicken nuggets. It's still a pizza restaurant. It's still a pizza chain. I don't know why. I don't know. I guess, is this just what Germans think America is, I guess? I don't know.
The mafia got involved, and they were like, it's too close to our front business name.
Fast Food Tycoon was released in 1999. I should say also that both these games were for CD-ROM. Again, I really wanted to include another line. This one is from Fast Food Tycoon's Wikipedia page, just for the lols.
In addition to being a restaurant business simulation game, Pizza Syndicate also incorporates a mafia theme. Big surprise. Where players can make use of an underground syndicate to achieve their goals. The player can choose to take their character on missions, where possible outcomes include the game-ending death of the player character. This sounds wild.
Yeah.
This sounds wild.
You're just playing your little pizza game, and you could die. In what other restaurant simulator game can your player character die? From
mafia mob activity specifically.
Yeah. Not even you caught the kitchen on fire. So that is Pizza Syndicate / Fast Food Tycoon / Pizza Tycoon. Going to move forward a little bit in time to another restaurant management game called Diner Dash.
This is what I was thinking of earlier.
Yeah.
Because they did have a Facebook version that you could play on Facebook, I'm pretty sure.
That probably is correct, yeah. Diner Dash was available originally for PC, came out 2005, extremely popular. And had many sequels over different consoles, just a couple of them: Xbox, PlayStation, Wii. I don't have it written down, but I do feel pretty confident in saying, like you said, Julia, that this was available on Facebook.
I'm pretty sure, man.
Or some kind of web-based version. So, how popular was Diner Dash? According to a market report that I found, quote, over the period of 2005 to 2007, so just 2 years, the Diner Dash games have been one of the most downloaded series on personal computers, with over 200 million downloads worldwide and $35 million in consumer spending. That is just in a period of 2 years after its release, okay? That's not counting all of the sequels, all of this time later, 200 million downloads just in those 2 years. Everyone was playing Diner Dash.
Yeah, I was playing Diner Dash.
Yeah, almost certainly I played Diner Dash at some point. So if you, I don't know, were not old enough to be on the internet, didn't have your parents' permission in 2005.
If you weren't born yet.
You weren't born yet. If you've never played Diner Dash, you play as Flo, who is a hardworking waitress who has to manage a restaurant, right? This is another kind of restaurant management sim. The type of restaurant changes over time as you kind of progress through the different levels. First, it's a diner, like the title. Then it's a tiki bar. Then it's a seafood restaurant. Then it's a fancy bistro. And finally, you get an Indian restaurant. I don't know why you end with an Indian restaurant. That's very interesting to me, but sure.
Sure.
So your goal is you have to seat, serve, and collect tips from patrons and clear tables before the line gets too backed up or customers are waiting for too long. So again, that sort of time management, keep all the customers happy type of deal. So Diner Dash is different than Pizza Syndicate / Pizza Tycoon because rather than that very omnipotent, overlooking kind of Sims type of way where you're looking at everything from a bird's eye point of view and you're very zoomed out from the experience, or it's very high level where you're just like buying equipment and you're making money. With Diner Dash, you are playing as a character in the restaurant. You're sort of boots on the ground. You are the busy waitress. You are serving the customers. You're actually like handling the day-to-day operations, not just like big businessman. It's more of a time management system than business management itself, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
A little less entrepreneurial, which is a word I like to try to use when I can.
It's a fancy one.
And I would argue that, you know, as a player, that makes you more engaged, right? If you are in the actual action of the game, you know, it's more engaging, it's more personable. You get the stress and like kind of excitement of trying to get the orders done on time. You're not just, like I said, very zoomed out. I mean, I feel like Pizza Syndicate, even with all of its fun mafia antics, is kind of like a little bit more like Spreadsheets the game. Not entirely Spreadsheets the game, but you're not as personally invested, I don't think.
Yeah, this is more of like a role-playing game where you are playing as a person.
I would also like to point out that, which I think is kind of nice, a nice turn, Flo is not sexy. She's just a hardworking business lady. She has a dirty apron and she like wears modest clothes, very sensible. She's got her sensible shoes on. She's just there to get her tips and make those customers happy.
She's not like the Arby's or Hardee's girls in those commercials.
No. Yeah. She's a girl boss. She's here to get paid and get her done. So thank you, GameLab/PlayFirst. So kind of as you alluded to, Julia, in the early 2000s, there's plenty of these like browser-based or flash games that are focused on restaurant management more so than actual cooking. Obviously, we can't cover all of them, but the real ones out there, no. Email us your favorite early 2000s flash games, even if they're cooking related or not. Just drop us an email. I would love to hear them. Another browser-based game is the Papa Louie series, which is created by Flipline Studios and notoriously hosted on coolmathgames.com.
Hell yeah.
Did you spend some time on coolmathgames.com?
I spent more hours than I'd like to admit on coolmathgames.com. Again, mainly on the lemonade stand. It was just Spreadsheets the game.
Yeah.
Where it's like, lemons cost this much and sugar costs this much. How much are you going to price your lemonade for? Oh no, it's raining. You don't get any money because no one showed up.
Well, see, okay, so that is actually somewhat of a math game, unlike a large portion of the games on coolmathgames.com, which really were not related to math at all.
No, I'm thinking about the driving one, and I'm like, why was this on Math Games?
Yeah.
It's driving a little car? Anyway.
So the Papa Louie series, not to be confused with or related to Cooking Mama. Papa Louie is a separate entity, a separate parental cooking-based entity, not at all. No legal resemblance to Cooking Mama. The first game was released in 2006, and it was called Papa Louie When Pizzas Attack.
Oh, no.
Which is a name, for sure. And it was quickly followed by the much more popular Papa's Pizzeria in 2007, which there's got to be people out there who played Papa's Pizzeria. You may have even played Papa's Pizzeria, Julia.
I probably have.
Now, if you haven't played Papa's Pizzeria, there are 17 games in the Papa Louie verse.
The Papa Louie verse. Sorry.
There's a very good possibility that you could have played any of those. Apparently, because there are so many, I read this online, that games in this series are apparently referred to as gamerias because the titles all end in ia, right? So Pizzeria, Popsicle-ria, whatever. We're going to talk about some in a minute, but they all end in ia. So it's not a Papa Louie game. It's a gameria.
It's a Papa Louie gameria. I love that.
Yes, yeah. Glad you're keeping up. I could describe for you how, the object of Papa's Pizzeria, how you play it. But Julia, instead, I would like you to read this description from the official website. I'm sure it sounds like this because it was written for children, but I just love it so much.
Okay. Papa's Pizzeria is a part of the Papa Louie Restaurant Management Game Series. Papa Louie is the chef king. He opens many restaurants around the world. Now he has to leave the town for his business. and you have to help him run the pizza restaurant until he is back. Try to serve the customers and create delicious pizza to make them happy. You will need to take care of the whole process of running a restaurant, from taking orders and baking pizzas to upgrading the restaurant. Like in other cooking games of the series, your mission is to serve the best pizza for the customers. When they are satisfied, you can earn more money. So work hard and smart to grow the restaurant and make Papa Louie proud.
Make Papa Louie proud.
It sounds like it was written by AI.
It does a little bit, yeah. It's a fine line of like, was this written by AI? Was this written to be read to like us, young children?
Yes.
You can say. But it also does sort of read like English as a second language, maybe. Or like
exactly.
Simplified English,
Yeah.
If perchance someone from Flipline Studios is listening, please know, and I do mean this with all sincerity, I am not making fun of your description. It's lovely. I
love it.
I think a lot about like work hard and smart to grow the restaurant and make Papa Louie proud. That is all I've ever wanted.
Is that the next sticker for Girls Lunch in our sticker collection? Make Papa Louie proud.
Yeah, that or Papa Louie is the Chef King is also really good.
Oh, God. That is good.
As we'll see in a minute, he is indeed the Chef King because he has, as we said, 17 different restaurants. And so, as the description you just read, all the games are basically this way, right? You take orders, you make the food, and then you deliver it to the customers, and they give you money, and then, you use that money to grow the restaurant, upgrade the business, et cetera, et cetera. Something I think is interesting about a lot of these like restaurant management games is the amount of cooking is like not always the same. Sometimes, like we said, it's very high level. Sometimes you're very like hands off. You're just serving the food. Sometimes you like just click a couple of buttons and that's like you cooking. The Papa Louie series, you do get to like build a pizza, right? I mean, they'll tell you like, I want mushrooms and spinach and anchovies or whatever. And then you have to make it that way. But you do actually get to like click and put all the ingredients on there. All right, Julia, we're going to play a quick game. A game within a game. It's games all the way down on this one, baby. So
hell yeah.
So I have here a list of 5 Papa Louie titles. Which one of these is not a real game in the Papa Louie series?
Holy moly.
So we have, in order, Papa's Sushiria, Papa's Scooperia, Papa's Ramenria, I think, Papa's Paletteria, and Papa's Freezeria.
Okay. Is this a trick question?
This is a trick question. These are all real games in the Papa Louie series.
I was about to say, those have all gotta be real games.
Yeah.
You can't fool me. I'm in there.
She's in the zone.
I'm metagaming.
I just tried to pick the ones that sounded the most outlandish, and
they all do.
They all do. Many game Marias to choose from if you were allowed onto a computer during what was supposed to be productive computer time in computer lab and did this instead.
That's exactly what I did.
With the demise of Adobe Flash in 2020, RIP King.
RIP.
You need emulators to be able to play these on certain websites, but I'm going to include a link in the description that does not require Flash, that you can just play now.
Oh boy.
You can play all the game Marias that your heart desires. And there's also mobile versions as well, so you can just make all the burgers and hot dogs and cupcakes and sushi until the cows come home, baby.
You best believe I'm getting on those Game Marias later.
Absolutely. So that's the Papa Louie series. Now we're getting into sort of the late 2000s, the 2010s. The internet's getting faster. Technology is continuing to get better. We see a rise in casual gaming, which is, as we discussed last episode, games that are really easy to master or easy to pick up and put down. So let's talk about one of my favorites from this time period, which is Cake Mania.
I remember this one.
You played Cake Mania?
I think I played it at a friend's house. I don't think I owned it.
Okay. Or as I was researching this, I think I realized that I only ever played the free version of Cake Mania because I was looking at some of the later levels and I was like, I definitely don't remember this. And I realized it was because I just played the free version that was available, like just online. As I said, I have logged many hours playing the original Cake Mania after school on the family computer as a child. And I was apparently not the only one, because Cake Mania was the most downloaded casual game in 2006. Not just burger restaurant management sims anymore, people. We've got cakes now.
Or pizza.
Or pizza. Cake Mania was originally a PC/Flash game that you could play for free on websites like MSN Games, which is probably where I played it. And I figured out that I probably only played the free version because basically the strategy that they used is they let you play level 1 for free, you know, on MSN Games or lots of these other like gaming websites. But in the free version, you can't purchase any upgrades or unlock any new levels, which is a very effective strategy to get people to buy the full version, right? You give them a little taste of like, ooh, do you want to make a bunch of cakes? And you say, oh, I do want to make a bunch of cakes. And then you got to buy it. The plot of Cake Mania, and there is a plot, which I think, you know, sometimes these games are lacking. You play as Jill, who is a dark-haired, very sweet-looking lady who just loves to bake. She grew up learning to bake in her grandparents' small-town bakery. The opening to the game starts off as like, I learned how to bake at my grandparents' bakery. And, you know, you get to see like little Jill, and she's carrying this big cake, and oh, it makes your heart feel so warm and nice. So she goes off to college, and then she comes home, and she finds that her grandparents' bakery is closed.
Oh, no.
Well, golly gee, the Mega Mart bought them out, and they can't afford to buy it back because no one likes homemade cakes anymore.
Jojo Mart, is that you?
Yeah. I'm not going to say that like it's a super original plot, but there is a plot. Your goal, or Jill's goal, because you play as Jill, is to run your own bakery and make enough money to eventually buy back your grandparents' bakery. And so you do this by baking cakes based on customer orders. So basically, you know, as we've said many times up to this point, customer comes in, they say, I want this type of cake. You make the cake, and then they pay you. It's a time management game in the sense that you need to get the order done right and get it done quickly to get a maximum tip and also avoid having too many customers getting kind of backed up. But at least it's giving you a somewhat altruistic motive. You know, it's not just like, I want more money so that I can have a sick-ass chain of pizza restaurants.
I gotta run my pizza mafia. Hold on.
So it's less of a cooking game in the sense that you're not doing really any cooking. You're not mixing, you're not cracking eggs, you're not doing anything like that. You're just clicking to start the cake in the oven, and then you click to decorate. The cakes are also really funny looking. They're like these very specific shapes like stars and hearts. And I can only assume that that's to make it like easier to see on like a lower quality screen. And they have super brightly colored icing. They honestly look like really garish and kind of ugly. I also think it is so funny that the backstory for this game is like, no one wants to buy homemade cakes anymore. But the game doesn't even really have you making the cake. You're just decorating. And even the decorating is done by this like fancy robot machine. You like click on the color. So if a customer comes in and says like, I want a heart-shaped cake with pink icing, you click a button on the oven that has a heart symbol and it makes a heart cake. And then you put it on the decorator machine and you push the pink button and that spray paints it pink with pink icing. So like you, Jill, are really not even home making the cake. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's very like, I feel like they missed their own plot here or something. I don't know.
They're like, how can we make this game playable? Oh yeah, automations. Now let's add a plot. How can we make people feel things? Capitalism.
Yeah, exactly.
And no one went, but wait a second.
So as I said, Cake Mania, the most popular casual game of 2006, very popular, spawned a total of 5 sequels over multiple platforms, including Nintendo DS, Nintendo Wii, PlayStation Portable, and PlayStation 2. Moving right along, next we have Order Up, which is for the Wii in 2008, developed by Supervillain Studios. So similar to other restaurant simulators we've discussed, your overarching goal is to be able to, stop me if you've heard this one before, earn enough money to buy, actually this one is slightly different.
Oh.
You earn enough money to buy all the restaurants in town. So not just like buy more, but all of them in some sort of monopoly type like enterprise. Upgrade your equipment, hire employees, etc. Different restaurants serve different types of food. Would you like to guess what the tutorial is?
It's either burger or pizza.
It is a burger restaurant,
There
yes.
you go.
So this burger restaurant is the tutorial level. There's a diner, there's a Mexican restaurant, an Italian restaurant, a Chinese restaurant, and a fancy French restaurant. The goal is like, and it's interesting in the sense that you may not progress like linearly. Like you can keep working at the same restaurant that you own until you earn enough money to be able to buy another one. So it's not necessarily like, oh, you finished the diner level, now you must go to the Mexican restaurant. You know, it's like you have a little bit more wiggle room. And it's not like you finished this, now do this. You can replay it until you have enough money to be able to get to whatever stage you want. I suppose you could just play this game like if you just wanted to be at the diner all day, every day, and just have the sickest, best diner with 1 million employees forever.
Expand your diner empire. I do think it's really interesting with like this game and also Diner Dash, how it's like the restaurants that are chosen to be levels and kind of like the hierarchy. I think in Diner Dash you also said that there was like a fancy French bistro or something like that, and this one has like a fancy French restaurant. And definitely in the early 2000s, French food was still considered like the epitome of restaurant cuisine, which I would not say that's the case nowadays. It's just interesting to be like, oh yeah, you know, your lower levels are like a diner or like a Chinese food place, but like your upper tier things are like the French restaurant.
So I think that Order Up is a pretty good blend of some of the elements of, like we've been talking about, Diner Dash, and then some elements of Pizza Tycoon. So you actually get to play within any of the restaurants that you own, like actually getting to cook the food. You're playing as a chef, but you also do kind of decide on the high level elements. So you're the one who's earning the money, right? So you can decide if you want to upgrade your equipment, or if you want to save up to purchase another restaurant, or if you want to like get an employee. And also, like in a managerial sense, you can direct some of your tasks to those employees. So if you're like, I don't know, if you're at the diner and somebody orders a meatloaf, you can direct your employee, like, make the mashed potatoes, and then they take care of that task and you get to do the other tasks. So I think that's a cool mechanic too. Order Up has like a nice blend, I think, of the fun of actually cooking the dishes and trying to complete the orders on time, right, and get those nice tips. But you're also working towards that larger goal, or the sort of broader sense of expanding your monopoly on the whole restaurant scene in town.
Creating your own pizza syndicate.
Exactly. I don't know if you can get the mob involved in this one, though, which is a little sad.
That's a DLC.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And something else that I think is cool with Order Up is cooking involves not just like clicking one button, like we were just talking about with Cake Mania, where it's like push button and then you get cake. There's usually multiple steps depending on the dish. So like if we're thinking of, again, the very classic burger restaurant, it's not just like push button to get burger, because it wants you to actually be like doing some of the steps. So it's like you put the fries in the deep fryer. You put the burger on the grill. You flip the burger. You cook the bacon. And you also have like a timer, right, to make sure that the fries are done. It gives you like one of those little green to red kind of like slider scales where it's like, okay, this is when the fries are at peak perfection. If you go longer than that, they're going to get burnt. Or if you undercook them, you know. I have to say, I don't think I've ever played this game, but I like that it kind of has like a lot of different things going on and some complexity. For some reason, there were no real sequels. They just had an enhanced port to the PlayStation 3 and the 3DS and a mobile game, but the original game did receive positive reviews. I don't know to what degree. I don't think it was quite a sensation like some of the other games we've talked about, but it did, you know, it seems like it did all right. And speaking of mobile games, what is an episode talking about food video games without talking about Candy Crush?
Or Fruit Ninja.
I did think about putting Fruit Ninja on here, but I didn't want our mobile game interlude to be too long. So
Fair.
You could argue Fruit Ninja is like sort of it's not a cooking game, but you are cutting up fruit. So there's something there. But for now, we'll just focus on our obligatory mention of Candy Crush. It's not really a cooking game, but it is candy-based. And as we said earlier in part 1, we are women. We love sweets and treats. So I have to talk about this sweets and treats-based game. But Candy Crush is also literally one of the most popular games ever made.
Oh, yeah.
So we do at least have to mention it. Candy Crush, originally released in 2011 as a browser game. The game developer King then turned it into a mobile app, which is called Candy Crush Saga, which was released in 2012. If you've never played Candy Crush or Candy Crush Saga, which I don't know how, it's a match 3 game. So if you know Bejeweled, you have to match 3 pieces of candy in a row to like clear levels, right? Sort of like it's not a puzzle game exactly, but it's a matching game. You're sliding the pieces of candy around until they all match. At its peak, Candy Crush Saga was earning almost $1 million per day.
Holy moly.
Holy moly. Day. As of September 2023, Candy Crush Saga has earned over $20 billion with a B dollars in lifetime revenue and been downloaded more than 5 billion with a B times.
What?
Yeah. These are numbers that are so large that the human brain cannot comprehend, but like...
But there's like, what, how many people on the planet?
We are at roughly 8 billion people in the world.
Okay, we have 8 billion people, and there have been 5 billion downloads. I know there's like duplicates.
Right.
But still.
Thinking about the fact that like, if everyone downloaded it one time, over half of the world's population would have downloaded Candy Crush.
That is absolutely wild.
So I was like, it's not a cooking game, but it's Bananas Town.
It is Bananas Town.
Sound off in chat, get in the comments, send us an email if you are still playing Candy Crush or associated properties in the year of our Lord 2025. And I don't mean that disrespectfully at all. Over half of the world's population could be playing Candy Crush. So hit us up if you're still playing Candy Crush. Are you okay?
Me?
Just checking.
Yeah.
No, Candy Crush. I mean, Candy Crush players. Like, are you?
Yeah, are you good?
Yeah. And so now we have reached, roughly modern times or the 2020s. We continue to have very popular consoles like the Nintendo Switch and the PlayStation 5. We're also having, I would say, a resurgence in PC gaming and indie games thanks to websites like Steam, where you can just, everybody's got their rig, right? Your PC rig.
Your Steam Deck.
So let's finally get to a game that Julia has really wanted to talk about.
Oh, yes.
Which is Overcooked.
Oh, my God.
Available for PC and Switch. Originally released in 2016 by Ghost Town Games, it does have a sequel, Overcooked 2, which came out in 2018. Do you want to talk about Overcooked, Julia?
I would be happy to. So in the first game, there is a giant food monster that when you start the game, you're trying to cook for this giant food monster, and you don't do good enough. You die, and the giant food monster get mad. And then you get teleported back in time, and the king of your realm, who I believe is an onion.
He is yeah.
Oh, it is an onion. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, the Onion King of Onions, is like, oh, you done fucked up, Aaron. You gotta go back in time and train and get better so you can defeat the giant food monster. And that is basically the plot of the game. You go through all these different levels, and it's very like modern game mechanics where it's like you've got your fire levels where you're in a volcano, you've got like your ice levels, stuff like that with like increasingly more difficult mechanics as you like build up your skill in the kitchen making all sorts of different kinds of foods. Depending on the level, you once again face the giant food monster from the beginning of the game and hopefully defeat him.
Okay, so that's a very good overview of Overcooked. So like Julia said, you're playing through lots of different levels where you are doing various tasks to create dishes with your fellow chefs. You got pizza, burgers, sushi, fish and chips. There is quite a bit of variety to some degree in like what you're making. You're not always making burgers. You're not always making pizza. But as a cooking game, you apparently have to include those. So they are there so that you know,
legally required at this point by the mafia,
by the Pizza Syndicate. In terms of gameplay, you are doing like 3 to 4 tasks per dish, right? You might be chopping something, cooking something in a pan, then you are assembling it on a plate, and then you're putting it out to be taken to a customer. There are customer orders that come in across the top of the screen. So like, I want my pizza with pepperoni. I want mushrooms on my pizza, whatever. So you have to make it correctly according to that. And there's also a game clock as well. So there's clocks on each individual order, after which point the customers will get impatient and you like lose points because they'll just be like, heck. Then they'll just leave. They'll be like, screw this place, too slow. And then there's also like a clock. I want to say it's like 3 minutes or something for the level itself, which is just like also giving you like how many orders can you get done in that amount of time.
Yeah, and there is a star completion system.
Yes.
Where if you get a certain amount of orders done in your time limit, you get like a certain amount of stars. And I will just say, my brother and I 100%ed both games.
Whoa.
We got every star possible.
Wow.
Oh, we were a well-oiled machine.
So that's actually something else that's worth mentioning about Overcooked is it is what is called a couch co-op, which means that you have to play locally, which means if you're not into all the video game lingo, that means you have to be playing on the same system as other players, right? Mm-hmm. This is not like you can connect digitally to people like online, which means that you have to communicate to work together to operate an efficient kitchen. Cooperation is very much an emphasis in this game. That is why the Onion King sends you back in time, as he says, you're not cooperating well enough. You need to learn how to be a better team. So this is, depending on your relationship with your spouse or your friends, a great game to play with people you love, or also a terrible game. So
Yep.
Ryan and I have had many days where, you know, as a married couple, you kind of know how to communicate with the other person. Some days it's going real well. Some days it's not happening and you have to rage quit before you both throw something, you know?
Yeah, if you want to succeed, you have to play the game with a specific other person.
Yeah.
That you can work together with intimately, I'd say. On an intimate level.
Yeah. Yeah. To that point, Agatha in Delicious Pixels describes this game as, quote, purposefully chaotic. Because not only do you have the chaos of like trying to communicate with other players, trying to keep up with orders, but the kitchen is often disrupted by like changes in the environment, right? The floor might break apart, obstacles show up, things start moving around, which I would say adds a little bit of almost like a puzzle element to some degree of like, because sometimes things will happen of like, oh shoot, how am I going to get this thing over to this part of the map? I have to throw it. I have to put it on this conveyor belt.
Wild levels.
So that is Overcooked. Finally, the newest game that we're going to talk about, this just came out in 2023. This game is called Venba. It is available for PC and Switch, and it's produced by Visai Studio. So, as described on the game's website, quote, Venba is a narrative cooking game where you play as an Indian immigrant mom who immigrates to Canada with her family in the 1980s. Players will cook various dishes and restore lost recipes, hold branching conversations, and explore in this story about family, love, loss, and more.
I have not heard about this game. I'm shocked.
So the plot of the game revolves around a mother who's feeling distant from her son. Her son's trying to adjust to like Canadian culture after they've moved there from India. And the mother is trying to like maintain or stay connected with her Indian identity. So some really cool stuff about like the immigrant experience and how that's tied up with food and all of that type of stuff. For Delicious Pixels, Agatha interviewed the game's designer and programmer, Abi, who gave the following quote, which I think is really cool, like insight, like behind the curtain about the design of the game, if you want to read it for us, Julia.
Yeah. The dishes you cook have significance to the narrative too. You don't unlock recipes like you do in a traditional game. but instead the story in each level contextualizes a reason to cook a certain dish, and the player has to consult the damage recipe book to do so. The way we've approached cooking in this game is to encourage players to think about the actual processes involved in each dish. Since the player only has the partial recipe, they have to make informed guesses and try different things before they can get it right and successfully progress the story. That's very cool. I like that.
Yeah, so it's very different than a lot of the games we've talked about up to this point, right? Where the plot is you run a restaurant and you want to run bigger restaurant, have more restaurant.
Expand Pizza Syndicate.
Exactly. As it says, I think it's accurate that it's described as like a narrative cooking game because it does feel like very story driven. It feels like a narrative game first with a cooking mechanic.
Yeah.
So like not only are we getting a very strong narrative arc and very strong characters, but we also get like a cooking mini game, right? So you do still get to like make lots of these cool Indian dishes, and it has a beautiful art style.
Oh, how pretty.
I, myself, 100% am downloading this and playing it this week because it looks just so nice.
It looks so sweet.
To wrap up all of our sort of like history sections here, cooking minigames and elements are also present in lots of other games, right? You got Breath of the Wild, you've got Stardew Valley, lots of other farming sims, which honestly I would say farming sims are sort of their own category since the focus is, I mean, oftentimes you cook in them, but it's not the focus. And also, if I included those episodes would have been even longer.
Part 4, Part 5.
Exactly. This is the podcast now. You know, there's cooking in games like The Sims, Minecraft. They added cooking somewhat recently to Animal Crossing New Horizons. It has made its way into lots of games for lots of different reasons, and I just think that's neat. That's me with Marge Simpson and the potato. I just think it's neat.
I just think they're neat.
Yeah.
I agree. I also think cooking mechanics are neat because people like food. And we like the things that we play as to also like food. Like I said, my favorite kind of game is me being a little guy on an adventure. And I want my little guy on the adventure to be able to eat an apple.
And I want my little guy to be able to fish. This makes it sound like it's the end of the episode, but it is not.
No.
We still have much more to discuss. But first, perhaps, shall we have the food fact of the day?
Let's go.
Are we getting a special guest?
David will be presenting our food fact of the day today.
David Cogswell, so glad to have you back on the show.
So, what we're doing right now is we are going to talk about the food fact of the day concerning witchcraft, witchery, and all things plant.
Woo!
When I say the word witch, what are some associations that we have? Nicole, let's start with you. What are some things that you think of?
Sandwich.
Excellent. A good literary pull, indeed.
Dark clothing.
Okay.
Little black cat.
Okay.
Pointy hat.
Uh-huh.
Rides a broom.
Okay.
Cauldron.
Cauldron, good. Okay. Julia, anything else to add to that?
Macbeth.
Macbeth, okay, great.
Spells.
Spells.
Harry Potter.
Harry Potter.
Toiled, boiled in oil.
Okay, that was good. It's interesting because we're actually gonna use that. We're gonna use.
Sweet.
Yeah, we're gonna use that.
I got it 100% correct.
Yeah,
right?
you
like
actually
word for word.
110%.
A
in
plus.
fact. Yeah. So these are all classic things that we associate with witches, especially Halloween and these sorts of things. But my real question for you is this: before witches were these things, the things that you just listed, what were they really? What was their original job?
They were medicine women, herb women.
Yep.
I had a whole episode about this.
Yes, which is why I thought that this would be relevant because you guys have talked briefly about this concept before, and I thought we could turn it into a game that I play with my high school students. Julia is absolutely correct. Witches were medicine women. They were herb women at one point, and so a lot of the lore surrounding witches that has kind of been bastardized across history, the impetus for that is actually Shakespeare. Specifically, the play Macbeth. And of course, Shakespeare is not the originator, he's not the progenitor of these things, but he did popularize a lot of these images of witches. So the real question then is, does anybody know why witches fly around on brooms?
Phallic imagery.
Yeah, there's some thought, there's some papers behind that, but no, what I really want to know more specifically is why witches fly. Why is that part of their mythology?
Oh, I semi remember this where it was like some sort of hallucinogenic drug or herb that gave people the sensation of flying.
That is correct. Yes, it's drugs. Witches were high.
Hell yeah!
So, as you pointed out, witches were medicine women. They were herb women, and so of course, if Nicole, I'm going to use you as my example. You're out in the forest with your little bow and arrow, and you're hunting some poor animal to go bring home to eat or whatever. Wabbits, exactly. Wascally wabbits, and you fall out of a tree. I don't know why you're in a tree, but you fell out of one, and you break your leg.
Rabbits love trees. They love to get up there and be real tall.
Those rabbits.
They're just sad that they're not tall, so they try to climb and,
Yep, and this is canonical. All wabbits do this. Anyway, so you fall out of this tree hunting wabbits and you break your leg, and your buddy Julia has to bring you to the local herb woman, and the herb woman's like, well, I got to set your leg, but this is going to hurt like hell. So they're going to give you what's called a flying ointment. Flying ointments were made up of 3 particular ingredients, 3 very potent herbs. I will give you the first, and that is poison hemlock. Was one of the major herbs in a flying ointment. The other one is a purple flower. Let's see if you guys can't figure out. We'll practice for the main game. It's a purple flower. It's brought up in Twilight quite a lot.
Like Twilight the book series?
Yes, quite literally.
Oh man, I should know this then.
Uh-huh. The first part of the plant name is an animal. It is part of the deadly nightshade family. Starts with a W.
Is it wolfsbane?
That is correct. Nicole gets the first practice point. Very good. It is wolfsbane.
Oh, but it's only a practice point. Take it back. I don't want it.
That's okay. Don't you worry. We've got plenty of other points that you can earn. So the one ingredient was poison hemlock. The other was wolfsbane. The third one is a red flower. It is very often associated with World War I as a memorial flower.
Oh, the poppy.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, dang.
Yeah. So Nicole's on the faster on the draw here.
She is.
And so a flying ointment would have been made of these 3 ingredients, sometimes several others. But the way that it worked would be that hemlock, especially in certain doses, gives you very vivid dreams. Don't try this at home, kids. It is poisonous. It could kill you. Scientists have actually tried to recreate this potion, and they have died.
Oh, God.
Yeah, no. Like,
Jesus.
So hemlock gives you dreams. You or opium, either one could be used, will send you into a trance-like state, so you're not quite asleep, not quite awake. And then the last one, wolfsbane, gives you the sensation in certain doses of air rushing past your skin, tingling. And so when you combine all these together, you feel like you are
Flying.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
This is legitimately where witches, the mythology around why witches fly is because you, with your little broken leg, wandering around the forest hunting wabbits, you would need a painkiller. And so you would go to the local witch and she'd be like, yeah, here, slap this ointment on your face and the back of your neck, give it 30 minutes, you're high as a kite, and you wake up a few hours later swearing that she made you fly. So I have a passage here. I have this line from specifically Act 4.1 of Macbeth. Let's see. I will be all, Julia, you will be second witch, and Nicole, if you would be third witch. The passage says, double, double, toil and trouble, fire burn, and cauldron bubble.
Oh yeah, I got that word for word earlier.
Uh-huh.
Nailed it.
Nailed it. Flay of fenny snake, in the cauldron boil and bake, eye of newt and toe of frog, wool of bat and tongue of dog, adder's fork and blindworm's sting, lizard's legs and owlet's wing, for charm of powerful trouble, like a hell broth boil and bubble.
Double,
double, toil and trouble, fire burn and cauldron bubble. I thought we were all saying it at once.
Oh, no, that's okay.
Okay. How embarrassing.
How embarrassing.
Scale of dragon, tooth of wolf, witch's mummy, maw and gulf. Of the ravened salt sea shark, root of hemlock, digged in the dark. Liver of blaspheming Jew. Thanks for making me read that, David.
You're welcome.
Gall of goat and slips of ewe, silvered in the moon's eclipse, nose of Turk and Tartar's lips, finger of birth strangled babe, ditch delivered by a drab, make the gruel thick and slab, add theretofore a tiger's chaudron, for the ingredients of our cauldron.
Double, double, toil and trouble, fire burn, and cauldron bubble.
Cool it down with a baboon's blood, then the charm is firm and good.
Excellent. So this happens in the first scene of Act 4 of Macbeth, and Macbeth is about to go receive some prophecies from these witches, and they are, of course, creating this witch's brew. But this is the interesting part. Almost all of these ingredients, in some way, shape, or form, are actually plants. So you read fillet of fenny snake or eye of newt and toe of frog, wool of bat and tongue of dog, and these are plants. And Shakespeare's contemporaries would have known this. They would have known that these were referencing plants of some variety. Now, there are some of the ingredients in these that are actually just what they sound like nose of Turk and Tartar's lips. Those are people parts. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to play a game. I'm going to give you the ingredient from the witch's brew, and you are going to have to guess which plant it is. Our first one is Eye of Newt, which is, for your hint, a yellow flowering shrub. It is a common agricultural plant, often grown here in Montana. I have
Mustard!
That is correct. It is mustard seed.
Is it mustard?
Yeah, so Eye of Newt is
Wow.
mustard seed. All right, so that's first point to Julia.
I knew that one already.
Well, cheating.
Not from you.
Suspicious. Well, let's see if you can do the second one. I'm going to turn my computer further away from Julia so she can't see. Our second one is tongue of dog. Okay, now this one is it looks a lot like lamb's ear, but it is not lamb's ear. It is a small weed, does not have any flowers, and actually the name of this plant is quite similar to the ingredient in the witch's brew, tongue of dog. The beginning of this ingredient is another name for dog, specifically the kind that is used for hunting.
Oh, I was going to say hound's tooth. That's a pattern.
Ooh, so close, so close.
Hound's breath?
Nope.
No.
You're in the right direction, though.
Doggy nose.
Nope. It is hound's tongue.
Oh.
Hound's tongue
Oh,
plant.
okay.
Yes, yeah, you were overthinking it. Some of these names are quite literal. All right, here we go. Round 3. So 1 point for Julia, 0 for Nicole so far.
Oh, no, she got those 2 practice ones.
All right, wait. Do you want your practice points, Nicole?
No, I don't want your pity.
Okay, that's fine. All right, so the next one is wool of bat. Now, this one sounds rather ominous. This one is a very common plant in forests, specifically forests that have a lot of moisture. It is a
Moss.
Yeah, that is correct.
Oh, nice.
Absolutely. It is moss.
Yeah.
Yes. So wool of bat would have referred to actually any fluffy plant, not just moss, but moss was the most common. All right, here's the next one. Toe of frog. This one is another yellow flowering plant. It is a specific kind of flower. I won't make you guys guess the specific version of this, but if you can get the flower's name, that will get you the point. The flower starts with a B.
Buttercup?
That is correct.
Yay!
Yes, toe of frog
Oh.
refers to bulbous buttercup. Point for Julia.
Bulbous buttercup.
Bulbous buttercup. Yes, and if you, I had pictures ready for you guys, but if you look at the petals of these things, they look like little frog toes. They're really quite cute.
Oh.
All right, next one. This one is blind worm's sting. This one has one of the words from the witch's ingredient in it.
Stinging nettle?
No, good guess.
That's a good guess.
Wormwood?
That is correct. It is wormwood.
Wow.
Yes. Another point for Julia. It is worm's wood. All right, next ingredient, lizard's leg. For this one, it is also a very generic name for a kind of plant. Lizards do what? They climb on trees? What plant climbs on trees?
Lichen.
Close, but no.
Vines?
Ivy.
There we go.
there we
Nicole's
go.
got it. That is correct. It is ivy. So a lizard's leg would have
Nice.
referred to any kind of ivy. All right, next clue. This one.
Wait, what's the score?
Oh, sorry. Nicole, you have 2. Julia, you have 3.
Okay, just as long as we're keeping track.
I am keeping track. So this is called Scale of Dragon. This one appears in the text as well. This one you see in dentists often, and the name of the ingredient is actually also the name of the plant. You just have to reorder it. So Scale of Dragon.
What?
Don't overthink.
Certainly not just dragon
That
scale.
is correct. It is dragon scale
Wow.
plant. If you look up an image of this plant, you've seen them in so many doctors' offices. They have these giant leaves
okay.
that literally look like dragon scales.
Oh.
All right,
Huh.
here's our next one. Adder's fork. Now, this one has nothing to do with the ingredient name that witches would have used, or sorry, that medicine women would have used for this. This is another kind of flower. Now, I won't, again, make you guess the specific version of this flower, but the flower starts with a V.
A violet?
That is correct. So
Wow.
dog's tooth violet. So Nicole, you have 3 points. Julia, you have 4. It is a dog's tooth violet, Adder's fork. All right, don't you worry. We have a few more. So our next one. This one is called Tooth of Wolf. So this is another ingredient that is brought up. This one we mentioned earlier.
Houndstooth?
No.
Oh.
It was one of
Wolfsbane.
that is correct. There you go. It is
I don't know why.
Wolfsbane.
I was just like,
Houndstooth. The pattern.
The
All right.
pattern.
So we're even. It's 4-4.
One of these has to be Houndstooth.
One of these has to be Houndstooth. Okay, we've only got 2 more.
Okay.
So witch's mummy?
Cotton?
No. This one is a trick question.
Is it like dried up mummy?
That is correct.
Oh,
Absolutely.
Old
Because
timey people love to put dried up mummies and stuff.
there you go.
true.
That's
We
exactly
did.
right. Yes. And so witch's mummy would have referred to any dried up pieces of witch or a mummy that a witch had.
Yucky.
Yucky. Okay, last one. Here we go. This one is Tiger's Children. Now, this one is the hardest of them all. There are 2 words to the name of this ingredient. The first word is another name for a woman. An appropriate name for a woman.
A lady.
That is correct.
Ladies.
Okay.
Okay. Now, the second word, the first person who gets this one, so it's ladies. The second word is another name for a stole or cape that would have gone over their shoulders.
I was going to say lady slipper, but that's not. I'm thinking of something else.
Lady shrug.
Shrug
Ladies
is on the right direction.
shawl.
Shawl is closer. Hint, it starts with an M. It's also another name for what goes over your fireplace.
Oh.
Mantle?
That's correct. Yes, Nicole.
Oh.
All right, Nicole is the winner of our game. So Tiger's
job.
Children.
Really?
Yes, you won.
Wow. Okay.
So,
I don't feel like I deserve to win that. I don't know why. I feel like Julia was way better.
No, you were good. You were
Nope.
good.
Nope. So the last one, Tiger's Children, again a yellow flower and a small shrub is called Lady's Mantle. Well, that is my game.
Thank
That's
you.
my food fact of the
Wow.
day.
Thank you for guest starring.
Thank you for having me.
Now we know about herbs.
Now you know about herbs and herbs.
Okay, the real star of the show is back.
Okay. Get that imposter out of here.
Get that guy out of here.
All right. Now that we know about herbs, would you like to get wiggy with it?
Let's do it.
Let's get wiggy. Okay, so this is the moment that all of you, and by that I mean me, have just been waiting for, which is I devised both of these episodes and really just this concept, really just to talk about Cooking Mama.
Yeah.
So this has been the lead up of 1 3/4 episodes is just to talk about Cooking Mama.
Heck
So
yes. I've been wanting to talk about Cooking Mama for years.
what would you like to talk about?
I have a very specific memory of playing Cooking Mama on the DS in probably the late 2000s, early 2010s, and how I got stuck on one level because you had to separate an egg. And
Oh
I
my
couldn't
God, okay.
figure out the fucking way to separate the egg. And I kept failing at this dang level. And at that time, you couldn't really just Google like how to solve a level or anything.
You got to get your brother to do it, which is what I always did.
I gave up. I don't usually give
Wow.
up on games, but this one ended my Cooking Mama career.
I think it is so funny that you said separate an egg because I have here in my notes, I was going to talk about this later, but I'll talk about it now. Cooking Mama did teach me how to separate an egg in real life.
God.
Like that, I think it's so funny that we are so similar in so many aspects of our lives, but yet this is the moment where we are almost 2 sides of the same coin. Like we both had a pivotal Cooking Mama experience with separating an egg. Which, like, there are lots of things tasks that you could do in this game, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's funny that we both zeroed in on separating an egg, except you had a horrible experience and I had a great experience that I still think about to this day anytime in real life I'm making a cake or whatever and I have to separate an egg.
See, like, I knew how to do it in real life, but I couldn't figure out how to do it in the game. This is what really pissed me off.
If you have never played Cooking Mama, the game is kind of structured almost, I would say, like a collection of mini games. There's not much of a plot. Unlike Cake Mama, which we all know, we play for the plot to get Gamma and Gampa their bakery back from Mega Mart.
Yes.
The way the game works is you have kind of like a bunch of recipes you can select from. So you select a recipe that you want to make, mostly Japanese and American dishes, at least in the first game.
Mm-hmm.
And then Mama, who is a usually kindly, Japanese stay-at-home mom, guides you through the different steps to make that recipe. So let's say we're talking about eggs. Maybe you would pick omelet, right? So you pick omelet, There's like a crack the eggs minigame. There's a whisk the eggs minigame. Then there's a minigame where you like pan fry the omelet, right? Et cetera, et cetera. So it sort of breaks out the recipe into a bunch of smaller minigames that are all timed, and you have to interact with the DS touchpad to perform the steps. Like we were talking about with cracking the egg or separating the egg is like you use your little slider pen to like move the half of the egg around, or if you're whisking, you're going to like draw a bunch of little circles with your DS stylus pen, that type of thing. Which I would say makes the game pretty interactive.
Oh, yeah.
It's pretty hands-on, quote unquote.
Yeah, and this was the era of having, like, touchscreen games. And so all of these new mechanics were like, you were whisking, or like, you were flipping by touching the screen in a certain way. We're like, boy, howdy, it was a revolution.
Well, because, and I'm thinking about this now, we didn't really have mobile games at that point, right?
No.
2006 is when the first Cooking Mama game comes out. So we did not have iPhones or smartphones or the just wide availability of touch screens yet. It's, to some degree, starts with a Nintendo DS, at least if you're thinking in terms of touchscreen gaming. There are lots of Cooking Mama games. We will be discussing the CMEU, or the Cooking Mama Extended Universe, in this section of the episode. So it is a franchise. As we just said, the first game came out for Nintendo DS in 2006. The first game is just called Cooking Mama. It did very well commercially, and enough people liked it to spawn, as of this recording, 16 sequels.
Holy.
On par with Papa's Pizzeria in terms of gamerias here. So in addition to the Nintendo DS, sequels came out for other Nintendo platforms like the Wii, the 3DS, the Switch, and there's also some mobile games as well. Not all of these 16 sequels are about cooking. A lot of them are, but not all of them. So other additions to the Cooking Mama Extended Universe include Gardening Mama, Crafting Mama, and Babysitting Mama.
Huh.
Which did come with a baby plush that you could use as a controller.
What?
If you scroll down, Julia, you can see the little baby.
Oh my god.
Jump scare.
I don't like that. Don't like the eyes. I don't like the hands.
I think he's fine. Like, I see why people would think he's creepy. I think he's fine.
Yeah, he's fine. Think of the roundest shapes you can. And add the most minimal features and, like, a very distinct tuft of hair. I keep looking right into those embroidered eyes. I can't look away.
So this was for the Wii, Babysitting Mama. And so the way it works is, like, you put the Wii...
Did you put the controller in the baby?
You do put the controller in the baby.
Oh my god.
Yeah. You kind of put it in the back, so it's almost like you're sticking it kind of like out the back of his diaper. Like, you slide it onto his back. So you do various things in Babysitting Mama of, like, you rock the baby to sleep, or you, like, sing to the baby or whatever. I just wanted to include him. He's not really related to anything. I mean, Babysitting Mama's not a cooking game, but it's part of the franchise, so here he is.
I feel like maybe I should play this game for some training.
Yeah.
It'll teach me about how to take care of a baby, because Cooking Mama did teach me about food.
So out of the spin-offs that I just named, do you sense a theme?
I mean, domestic labor.
There we go. Yep. Gardening, crafting, babysitting.
Feminine domestic labor.
Absolutely. I think it's kind of funny that they're like, no, Mama has other hobbies. She doesn't just like to cook. She also likes to do crafts and garden. Like other, it's like Barbie has lots of hobbies. She doesn't just like to shop. She also likes to read fashion magazines and play dress up. You know, like...
Where is my lumberjack mama game? You know what I'm saying? Like,
there is a camping mama game, which is
Okay.
like, and it's like the whole family, because she has a family apparently. There's a papa, and
she's got to cook for someone. She can't cook for herself.
certainly not. So there's a papa and 2 children that she apparently has, and the camping mama, they just like go camping, and they have lots of other like little mini games, some of which is cooking, but not all of it is. Now, in addition to these official spin-offs we have talked about, there is an unofficial spin-off by, insert heavy sigh, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, PETA,
Oh boy.
that is called Cooking Mama, Mama Kills Animals. It was released in 2008.
Ooh.
PETA's goal was to showcase the brutality of eating meat by creating a Cooking Mama spoof game that shows Mama just gleefully butchering animals and making them into food. Obviously, I have not played it, from what I have seen of like stills from the video game, it's like you have to decapitate the chicken and like obviously all of that. In addition to this goal, their other goal is shock value, controversy, and headlines, which is just generally how this organization works. If you know anything about PETA, that's sort of their MO, is have these really big splashy like social type campaigns that get a reaction out of people. You can't see it, people at home, but I'm shrugging. Sure. In my opinion, PETA's take on Cooking Mama is broke, and Agatha's take on Cooking Mama is bespoke.
Oh, bespoke.
Totally skipping over woke, in my opinion. So Agatha, our friend who wrote Delicious Pixels, has a whole chapter of their book that is titled Gendered Food Practices in Cooking Games. And
Ooh.
you know that I ate that shit up. Pun
I'm
intended.
making little crab hands
Yeah,
right now.
exactly. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I just ate that right up. So the chapter is not just about Cooking Mama, but Cooking Mama does get a significant amount of page time. Several of the authors that Agatha cites describe Cooking Mama as a caregiving or a domestic game, since it's structured like Mama is kind of coaching you through these recipes. It's very passive in that sense. So if we think back to, at the very beginning of this episode, our like rigid creative spectrum, there's really not much flexibility in how you make the dish or what you make. Your creativity is you get to choose from a set of recipes, but the recipes are already predetermined and it already has predetermined steps. And actually the whole point of the like how you do well in the game and how you like get a certain number of stars to then unlock more recipes is by doing the various steps perfectly. So you like follow the steps that Mama gives you and you do it perfectly, or you fail. You fail the recipe. And if you're wondering if you fail any steps of the recipe, Mama gets a very angry expression on her face. She has like her eyes just like are flames. But for some reason, the caption, "Don't worry, Mama will fix it." Instead of like reprimanding you for your failure, I think it's interesting that it's like, I will fix it. And that idea that like mothers and women in the home like will just fix everything, you know?
Yeah. She had to fix a lot of separated eggs, I would say.
Yeah. Something else that really blew my mind in this chapter of Delicious Pixels was that a lot of cooking games do not actually involve eating.
Yeah.
The focus is on preparing food for other people.
Yeah, I just said this.
Yeah, you did. So you caught that right away. So, like, women are caught in this catch-22. As Agatha writes, there is a double standard considering the relationship between women and food. While interest in and the cultivation of skills related to food preparation is highly encouraged, one is not meant to admit to having cravings or deriving pleasure from consumption.
Dude.
That's definitely something we've talked about before in this show, right?
Yeah, in your cooking show episode. I feel like we talked exactly about this.
Yeah, I remember we talked about, I think, Barefoot Contessa, of how, like, she's always cooking for a party or cooking for her husband or something. Joffrey. But very rarely is she cooking for herself and then eating the food that she has cooked.
Yeah.
Like, women are expected to have these skills and to be able to cook and to be able to cook well. And if you're cooking Mama, correct mistakes all the time. But it's not about eating.
No.
The game part is the cooking part. And as we talked about with all of our restaurant management sim games, you're cooking for customers. You're not cooking for yourself. You're not even cooking for like, oh, other people at the restaurant or whatever. It is to serve customers, to make money.
So you're either contributing to a capitalistic system or you are the angel of the home. There's no in between. I guess unless you are playing a game in which cooking is a mechanic and not the whole game.
Right.
Then you're cooking for yourself, like in Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And then you eat it for boosts, status boosts.
Right. But I think it's part of a larger, because that's not the goal of the game, right?
Yeah.
Cooking is a means to an end. Cooking is a way to get certain, like you said, stat boosts or health boosts. I'm thinking about Stardew Valley as well. Like, cooking is a large part of that, and you are usually cooking for yourself, but it is towards a larger end or a larger goal of like, oh, I need more health so that I can do whatever other things that are towards the completion of the game. which again gets into the spectrum of like essential, optional. So I would argue that the more optional you go, the more likely it is that you'd be able to, or that your character eats the food. Versus like if cooking is more essential, that seems a lot less likely that you actually eat it.
That's so weird to think about, actually.
Isn't it though?
I mentioned it before, but Cooking Mama did actually teach me a lot about like food techniques when I was in 6th grade. And as someone who is just starting to become like really interested in baking and cooking and things like that, it really kind of opened up that door in an educational sense. Even though it was a very simplified way of making an omelet, the game still did kind of teach you how to make an omelet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think also, like, I was a huge weeb in middle school, and a lot of these foods that you make in Cooking Mama, I think, like you said, it's American and Japanese, but I was like, ooh, Japanese food. Like, you know, I see some of this food in, like, the animes I watch, and it kind of contextualized it more for me. Whereas, like, the dub was heavily localized. The classic example is, like, the onigiri in Pokemon being referred to as, like, donuts.
Oh, yeah.
I cannot remember if onigiri was in Cooking Mama, but things like that in which, like, very traditional Japanese foods were, like, contextualized in that sense for me, where, like, maybe I saw it as a powdered donut on Pokemon, but then, like, here I am actually making what the actual food is in Cooking Mama. You know what I mean? So cultural exposure.
Yeah. I had a similar experience. My brother and I played a lot of Cooking Mama growing up because we both really liked to cook, and we had similar, like, interest in Japanese food, even at a young age, but we lived in a very rural area. We probably didn't have a lot of exposure to Japanese culture. Like, it was cool to have that kind of cultural exchange, and then it, you know, got us interested in, like, oh, what is this food? Or, like, breaking food down into its component parts. Also, especially if it's from another culture, is like, oh, well, this is just like, you know, chicken katsu. It's just kind of like fried chicken, you know, like it's just breaded and fried chicken. That's not so scary. We're not so different, you and I, you know?
I really liked Cooking Mama as a game. And then the GameStop incident
Yeah.
from my anecdote from last episode happened. And I do remember Cooking Mama being one of the games where the guy was like, "This is for you." And I was like, nope. And I just stopped playing them. It was like, unfortunately, the pressure of like, you must play this game because you are a woman and this is a game for women and girls, turned me off of it so bad.
Yeah.
Where if it was more just like, this is a cooking game for everyone, I'd be more open to it.
Yeah, well now, I mean, that's a good thing about, you know, being an adult is now you can revisit things and approach them perhaps with a little bit of nostalgia, but also with, you know, a different lens and a different time.
Yeah, and I think also, like, cooking games are no longer just a girl game.
Yeah.
Like, there are a couple that have come out recently that I think that I'm thinking of. There's the one from the guy who, Concerned Ape, he's making Haunted Chocolatier, which I would consider a cooking game, right? Because you're making chocolate. And then there's one that recently came out that's literally just like the playable version of the fantasy novel Legends and Lattes, where like we're an adventurer who kind of has to like retire from an injury and run a cafe for a bit. And so I really like where all these cooking games are going, in the sense of like, you know, we've had these mechanics for 30 something years, and now it's like we're freestyling on them. We're like expanding them, making more narrative, making them maybe a combination of like cooking and action, or like cooking and something else. And, you know, it's not just like boxed into one genre or boxed into like one style anymore.
And if all else fails, you can always call your local mafia pizza syndicate to come and break the kneecaps of your competitors. Thanks for lunching with us. And we'll see you next time. Bye.
Our theme music is Red Onions by Louis Zong. Please check out the rest of his album Vegetable Soul in the description. If you have an episode suggestion or want to say hi, you can email us at girlslunchpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you for listening.
Is ketchup? It's got to have some kind of plant base, right?
A tomato.
Well, yeah, but
Well, all right.
okay, but like